Well, here and welcome. And I'd like to call to order the January 30th, 2025 Kansas Post-Secondary Technical Education Authority meeting to order. And before we get started on our agenda, I thought it would be good if we stood for a moment of silence for those who've lost friends and family members in the aircraft accident in DC. And we also should remember uh, those that are involved in the recovery effort as well. So if we'll stand, please, for a moment of silence. Amen. Thank you. Okay. Any changes? Thank you for that. Any changes to our agenda additions? Many of the TA members? Okay, good. And we'll move on to our minutes. We have minutes from our December 19th meeting, 2024. Any changes to the minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion to accept.
I would move to approve.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'd second.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion is approved. Okay, on introductions today, are there any introductions that would like to be made at this point? Mark, I think you haven't.
Yeah, Jared Frederick, if I could just add an introduction. Few folks may not know, I actually will be terming out this next May, and been great time on supporting the TEA board. And I have a employee, Morgan Gersman, who traveled with me to the meeting today, that's expressed an interest in being a candidate for replacement. He is homegrown Kansan, been here since 2004. He's currently our robotics manager out at Hess Services. So he works closely with individuals coming out of the tech education pipeline. And wanted to take a minute to introduce him. He's back here. If you wave out there, if you have any time to chat with him, he's pretty engaging and very politically astute and very involved in different state level of budgetary issues and educational topics. He's actually worked in the past to help develop STEM content in local Fort Hays State and colleges to help out with some of the elementary education students. Looking through his past educational background, he's got 2 associates from Johnson County Community College and finished up his bachelor's degree in tech studies from Fort Hays State University, and then went on to get a master's in science and engineering and technology from Oklahoma State. So wanted to introduce him, and if you guys have it, he'll be through lunch with us today. So if you had any questions or anything, he'd love to engage discussion with you. Thank you.
Good. Morgan, welcome. We're glad to have you. And I don't know if this is the time for you. If there's anything you want to say about Mark at this point, or we'll save it for lunch. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Anyone else? Now, we're going to meet a group of individuals later, but any other introductions? No? All right. Thank you. Okay, the chair's report. I just, the only thing I'd want to remind or at least inform our TEA members that there will be no TEA or committee meetings in February. You won't get paid. No, just kidding. But our next committee will be on March 13th. Committee's meeting on March 13th, and our full TEA meeting in person is scheduled for March 27th. So just a heads up, so you can adjust your schedules as need be. Okay, are any reports from TEA members of their activities, updates? Natalie?
Yes. So we have celebrated Citizenship Day, January 15th. We had our Career and Technical Student Organization state officers come to Topeka, present to the state board. And we are having a proclamation tomorrow with the governors for CTE month. And celebrating CTE month in February, we have our annual conference in Manhattan and it's waiting list. So we're excited. We kick off Monday, either Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Forward that tomorrow. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on. Next item, going to call on Vice President April White, provide us with an update from workforce development.
Thank you, Chair Frederick. One thing we did want to provide some clarity around was the recent federal grant pause that came down. It was a confusing 24 hours. So on Tuesday, about 10 o'clock, we received notification that all federal grants were basically frozen. So we reached out to all of the adult ed centers and all colleges who received Perkins and requested that they submit any reimbursements by 2 p.m. Tuesday. So we gave them very, very short time. We put pressure on our finance to then draw down money from the feds by the 5 o'clock shutoff. Wednesday, the very next day at noon, they rescinded that. So just so colleges are clear, businesses as usual, as far as we know, until we're told otherwise. But wanted to make that clear that we're back normal, quote unquote normal. In other good news, that same day, Vera and I stayed up probably later than we should have to submit the Perkins Consolidated Annual Report. So we have no errors so far, nothing we have to write to. So far, our data is all good for that. We weren't sure with the freeze and all the things going on in Washington, what was going to happen. So we made it a point to get that submitted. So now both our adult ed and Perkins reports are in for the year. So we are done. You will notice in your packet under the report section, the Workforce Development Unit is now going to submit a written report just like the community and technical colleges. So Hector, Vera, and Charmin will report on what their units have done over the past month. Another thing that we wanted to bring to your attention is you may notice that our website has changed. We are no longer .org, we are .gov. That was a decision made in the legislature last session that state agencies needed to have a .gov website. So now ours is, our emails are not changing as of right now. So I know Natalie, KSDE's email did change, correct? So KSDE's email addresses did change to .gov. However, ours remains .org. So just want to make that clear because that is confusing. Right now, the virtual healthcare day is taking place. We have representation from the board office on to answer any questions about scholarships and programs. So if you have people at your institutions, you might want to remind them that that is happening right now. I also wanted to give a reminder that the adult ed applications are due tomorrow by close of business. As a reminder, that is a 5-year agreement to be an adult ed provider. And the final reminder is that February is CTE month, and tomorrow a group of us will be at the Capitol for the governor signing the proclamation of CTE month. And I would stand for questions.
Any questions, comments of April? Well, the White House keeps us guessing, I guess. It's one of those, never mind, so we'll continue as we need to, and to respond to any changes that come down the pike. So, very good.
Ray, I'll just mention, it was an unpleasant couple of days. And it was unpleasant in the sense that, one, we weren't prepared. And two, we had so many people scared. So the grantees were scared. And I didn't even have to deal with a lot of nonprofit grantees, some, but it was very scary. So as we just govern in ways that we do, it is always good to let the people that are being impacted, I'm just saying, it's always good to let them know something's coming. And there's a lot yet that we have to unpack with this one that is going to be difficult to do because we have contracts. The contracts are made backwards ahead. And frankly, I'm not sure how how you even work through that. I'm pretty good with contracts. I find this going to be very challenging. So to all the school districts that were worried and to all the administrators that didn't know what to do. And if you weren't large enough to be able to cover expenses and you were worried how you were going to start or even continue a program and make payroll or to provide services, it was a very difficult 2 days. So I know the board office here was really working hard. So thank you to all of you for the stress that you encountered. And I just wish us all well going forward.
I as well certainly create a lot of uncertainty for many individuals and groups. Right, we're going to move on to our report from our community colleges. And I think President Seth Carter of Colby, is he?
Yes, sir, I am.
Oh, there you are. Welcome, Seth.
I apologize for not being there. I have influenza A and Vice
Thank you for
President.
not being here.
Well, I get told that a lot.
Yeah.
And Vice President White said the meetings are always better when I'm not around anyway. So I don't know if to take offense to that or to be flattered. I'm not sure. Not sure. But you all have a pretty comprehensive report from all 19 community colleges within your packet. Within there, you will see where each college has talked kind of about some of the semester trends that they have seen as far as enrollment. Also, you're seeing some programmatic highlights as well. I will go through and provide an abbreviated report on that. The majority of the community colleges were experiencing pretty healthy enrollment increases. Several colleges reported out very significant enrollment growth compared to last year. Multiple colleges had at or near a 100% NCLEX pass rate. The national average is 88% for this last reported year. Multiple colleges reported out 100% licensure pass rates in multiple programs. Again, you can kind of see that within the packet for each respective college. Multiple institutions also reported out the expansion of programs with new facilities and expanded business partnerships. And then several colleges also reported out pretty significant waiting list for their technical programs. I apologize, this is more of an abbreviated format than how we would normally do it, but you all have that data within your packet. And I stand for any questions or concerns as presented.
Any questions? Yeah, I would say the only concern we have is your health. So take care of yourself.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. It's far from the heart, but I think it's getting closer.
All right. Thank you, Seth. Get some rest. Okay, we're going to hear from our tech colleges. Jim, welcome.
Seth, thanks for staying home and not sitting by me up here. Well, greetings from the tech colleges for the new year. In case you hadn't noticed, I got a loan through so I could get my hair cut. Like as Seth mentioned, everybody's busy. Enrollments have been very good. The recent kerfluffle from the White House, I enjoyed watching our staff reactions to it, frankly, because I'm always telling them, anticipate and plan for the worst, and we'll work backwards. Last night, when the news came about the plane crash, I sent a text to President Utash. I said, tell me you're okay. Because as we all know, she travels all the time, often to DC. And about 20 minutes later, I got a message from her. She goes, I'm still at the Workforce Development Conference in San Diego. I'm fine. I said, good. But I got to tell you a quick story. When I was at Emporia State back in the 80s running TRIO grant programs, my boss had a pilot's license, and he and I were to fly up to St. Joe to see our Upward Bound program. That's where it was located at the time. So he went out early to the Emporia airport, checked out a plane. I pulled up. the guy in the airport said, yeah, Dr. Durst said he was going to take it up, check it all out, land and come pick you up. And as Dr. Durst landed the plane, he had the big one. Taxied into a tree, he was dead. And I don't know how to fly. So a few minutes later, if I'd been on the plane, so every time I hear these things, it brings back that memory for me, which I don't need to have anymore. So let's get to the good news. First off, while there's a lot of stuff to be done yet in the legislature, I do want to say Heather and I, and it's really because of the story of our institutions, but we did a pretty good tag team the other day with the House Higher Ed Budget Committee about performance, about why our funding makes a difference. And so far, their recommendation yesterday was approved by the House Appropriations Committee. So a little bit of good legislative news for you to digest. And again, thanks. The legislators asked me how the tech colleges got along with the community colleges, and I said it's kind of like an estranged couple. We talk all the time, but sometimes we don't get along. So, you know. Back to the report. Flint Hills Tech, Emporia's been hit with a lot of economic bad news, but they've had good luck at the college. They have a Patterson Foundation funding to help get along to do more with CDL training. They've had expanded cohorts for CDL. They're working with Tyson. There's another plant closing. So they are doing a lot of work and working with the State Department of Commerce on some transitioning for workers. Their adult education program partnered with Kansas Works and the Public Library in Emporia to host a resource and resume lab. And that's been helping a lot of the local workers who are looking to get a different job. Talent pipeline, they're waiting for Department of Ed approval for financial aid for the Precision Ag program. They have hired faculty to work on the program, and they're doing well. At our place, similar things. The adult education program has been going strong. We've been doing on-site ESL and safety personnel handbook training at a couple of industries in town. We've hired a plumbing instructor to help us stand up our plumbing program. By next fall, we're seeking an electrician instructor as well. Our retention graduation rates have been very strong. We're working in Fort Riley with some welding. We're working on two mobile VR trailers to take around our area, both for recruiting and for instruction. Probably the thing I'm proudest of the most is on January 10th, we got our letter from the Higher Learning Commission. We had our visit back in October. And Dave is a former president who used to worry about HLC. I read the letter. I know what the report had said, but here was their verdict. We had an absolutely perfect review in October. No changes to anything, no monitoring reports, follow-up reports, nothing. And so when our employees came back in January, that was the first thing I said, it's time to party. We done good with HLC, and that's a big relief. Salina Tech, Greg, again, they're doing great work with enrollment growth. They've increased minority student populations with Hispanic or two or more races to an all-time high for that area. And they've expanded a laptop loan program for students who need that assistance. They've now up to over 50 devices they're able to loan to students. Washburn Tech, Scott, what can we say about Scott? We all know he's moving everything. They've acquired the old Kmart building here in town so they can train more people, and a $3 million grant, excuse me, from McPherson's to help us grow and expand the CTE programs. Washburn Tech, Cherry reports that they've got a new program reaching into very younger children called, working with STEAM programs called Tech Tykes. And that's their first book in a new children's series is called Ella the Engineer and the Big Fix. And that's part of the Tech Tyke series. So as always, she leads the way. I'm a combination of jealous and proud of her. And you can, if you look at our report, there's a link there. If you want to look at the book, you can find it on Amazon or other places. They've started construction on a new Future Ready Center for IT for the high school students at their South Campus. It'll be a $35,000 square foot facility to be completed this summer. They currently have 3 community navigators. They'll be hiring 2 more. This is to work with military families as well as hopeless and those who are experiencing some hard times. And I think that completes my report at this time. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions, Jim? Congratulations on that HLC thing.
We got some pretty good people.
Must have a good leader too.
Yeah. I just tell pretty stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, next, we'll turn our attention to our consent agenda. And we've got 3 items from our technical program and curriculum committee on the consent agenda. Mike, did you want to make any comments regarding the agenda items?
I don't have any specific comments, but I think the committee continued to lean into those programs that are most in need, not only within the communities that they serve, but also statewide. And with that, I move to approve the consent agenda items.
We have a second? Okay. Any questions, comments? Any opposed? Okay, motion approved. Thank you. Okay. Elaine? We have Elaine that's going to give us a report and an overview of instructional cost model in the fiscal year 2025 state aid distributions. We promise not to shoot the messenger, but welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, authority members. So here today to talk a little bit about the cost model. So we do have a PowerPoint this morning. Check that this is live. So I'm not going to reference the materials in the agenda so much. The intent of the issue paper in your materials is to give you an overview, the standard spiel, but this is to give you a bit of a more of an in-depth view of the cost models and all the calculations that go into that. And happy to have Director Chambers here to also step in when I misspeak. So going forward then, so just a refresher, a reminder, the tiered and non-tiered funding that the colleges receive, as well as Excel and CTE, the formula for the cost model, instructional cost model, really came together in 2011, 14 years ago now, in Senate Bill 143, which created that post-secondary technical education formula. So the model was to identify the technical and the community colleges' direct and indirect expenses that they have to deliver courses for academic credit to Kansas resident students. That phrase, academic credit, is important because you will hear comments made that the colleges don't get state funding for other activities that they have at their colleges, and that is correct. So if it is not for academic credit leading to the credential, then that is not what this is for. Also, this formula does not address the college's costs for non-resident students. So a student who comes from New Jersey to come to a community or technical college, they are not part of this. So, nor does it cover college's costs for operating a student union, a residence hall, or athletics. Do want to also emphasize that there are inflationary adjustments that are applied throughout the formula. So as colleges increase costs over time, those are recognized in the model. That covers everything I wanted to cover there. The cost model does cover both sides of the ledger. So not only do we look at the expenses, the cost model also determines the funding side. So how are those costs to be funded? Because of the variations in the financing of the colleges, the community colleges have a slightly different structure for some of their students than the technical colleges to recognize the property tax mill levy that they have the benefit from. So for a community college student from within the college's taxing district, so they are determined to be in district, for those students' credit hours, the community college receives 1/3 from the student in the form of tuition, 1/3 from property tax revenue, and 1/3 from the state. So that's our third, a third, a third. For the out-district students, so if someone is coming from another county, they're in Sedgwick County and they go to Butler Community College, then it is 1/3 student tuition, 2/3 state. And that's how the revenue piece is determined. That applies, that same standard, 1/3, 2/3 applies to all technical college credit hours, 1/3, 2/3. For high school students participating in Excel and CTE, it is 100% state. So the colleges in the statute that created that program the statute prohibits the college from assessing a tuition on the high school students. But we do, of course, have fees, which you're going to talk a little bit later today. So jumping back then to the expense side of the ledger, how are the instructional costs calculated in the model? They are determined at the course level. So for tiered courses, there are 4 elements for how those costs are calculated. And we're going to cover each one of those: the instructor, the instructional support, the institutional support, and extraordinary costs. For non-tiered courses, which is the majority of the courses delivered across the system, it is only the 3 elements: the instructor, the instructional support, and the institutional support. And of course, we're going to get into some of the details of this, but the course rate is multiplied by the credit hours. So if it's a 3-hour credit course, then the course rate is multiplied by 3, and that's your total course costs. And then we add all of those up to get to the total for each institution. We source each of those 4 elements according to different data sources, most of them from the colleges directly. So for the class instructor, we use a 3-year average of instructor salaries and benefits. Institutions that participate in the National Higher Education Benchmarking Institute project, which happens to be housed at Johnson County Community College, those data elements that we get from them are then used to determine the instructor rate. And again, we're going to go into in depth on each one of these. For the instructional support, that gets at information published directly from the college's annual financial audits, and as we publish them in our data books. So that you can imagine that is all the things that the colleges do in support of delivering courses. Student services, which would be like an advisor. Academic support, so making sure that the resources at the college are there to deliver whatever support the faculty and the instructors need to deliver the course, and if they have public service activities at their college. The institutional support then gets at the higher level, the overhead costs of running the campus. So we have a college president, we have finance officers, we have financial aid staff and bursar's office, all of those other activities to run the campus. And again, that information is pulled together from what the colleges report in their annual financial audits. And again, we publish that information annually in our data books. And then also the campus physical infrastructure that they run, we also include that information in there as well. And then that last piece of the pie covers the tiered courses where we have our extraordinary costs. And that, again, all those specific things that we need from the schools on the extras that they have to purchase, either consumables or equipment to offer the technical courses. So we have over 10,000 course titles in our system, and I think we have 685 groupings of courses, and then they are each bucketed in each of the tiered rates. Now, this slide the numbers are very small, especially if you have bifocals, but we have rates this year ranging from $233 all the way up to $564, and you can see the progression back to 2011. Of course, we have all the detail, if anybody ever had interest to see how each of the tiers has migrated over the years. So we'll talk about each of the items, and please stop me if you have any questions as we go. Of course, one of the most important aspects of delivering a course is the instructor. And so we do have the instructor costs. We capture that data for faculty, which can include their benefits. We use the 3-year average of the most recent data available to us from the Cost and Productivity Study, which is at the Benchmarking Institute. They are based on actual reported costs. So as colleges report higher salaries and more expensive benefits, then those amounts change. We do want to point out and highlight not every one of our 26 colleges participates in that study. but we do source that. That is the one best source we have for this information. And here is a progression for the different tiers for non-tiered and the different tiered rates, how the instructor rate has grown. For non-tiered faculty, back in 2011, it was $77 per credit hour, and we have now progressed up to 115. So you can see that progression. And then the more technical instructors, they have a higher rate as you progress across over the years. And then moving on to the instructional support. So this would be your admissions office, your registrar, your financial aid, your student life, your library, any program directors, your deans for each of the different units. This captures the costs associated with those additional things. So not the faculty member, but a lot of the other associated expenses. For 2024, the instructional support rate is slightly higher, 1.9% than the previous year at $53 a credit hour. So this would be applied, this is applied to every one of the courses, just like the instructor. And again, this is sourced by a formula that we've used for many years according to the college's own reported data. And over time, those rates have gone. When we started back in 2011, it was $31 a credit hour, and we are now up to $53 per credit hour for instructional support. Institutional support costs then, similarly, the cost to manage the college and operate and maintain the campus infrastructure, the president, the business office, the IT support that everybody must have, communications, advocacy efforts. For 2024, the cost model data, the support rate is 3.2% higher than the previous year at $65 a credit hour. And that also does include operation of the physical campus. And here you can see the progression of the rates going from $38 up to $65 for 2024. So taking those three elements that I just talked about, the instructor, the instructional support, and institutional support for non-tiered courses, those are the three pieces for AY 2024 enrollment, that brings the total to $233 a credit hour. So for a 3-hour credit class, it's $699. And roughly half of that is attributable to the instructor and just slightly less than half to the overall running of the college. So a course, if someone had 15 students in a semester in a class that was a 3-hour class, that generates on the cost side to $10,485 in the cost model. So 15 times $699, that's for AY 2024. So across all of the colleges in the cost model, our cost calculated out to be $171.7 million in total. So we had 737,000 credit hours attributable to the non-tiered courses. And I believe we're going to get into some of that, but that is over 70% of the entirety of all the tiered and non-tiered together. So I can pause there if any questions. And it covers our non-tiered pieces. And then we can get back to the tiered courses. Of course, we have the extraordinary costs. So colleges have to purchase equipment and consumable materials to deliver their technical courses. It could be an X-ray machine for radiology program. If you visited college, you can see the new welding booths that they have that involve new technologies, food for a culinary program, fuel for a CDL program, animal feed for they have animals to take care of, latex gloves for medical programs. So all of the information is grouped and based on the college's information then, grouped into tiers, and we have from 0, depending on the information we get from the colleges, up to $139. And those are adjusted annually. So if we don't get a data refresh from the college, those amounts are updated for the rate of inflation. So they aren't just held flat. And I know that there are some very specific instructions given to the colleges when they report this. We did switch recently from the 5-year cycle to a 3-year cycle in response to the college's request. So this keeps us more up to date on actual data from the schools. And we do roughly a third each year. We do give very specific instructions to them on what not to include. So if they are charging a student fees for the cost recovery for something, student uniforms would be a good example of that. That is not to be recovered here. This is really more for the college's costs for what they need to deliver the courses and not what the students are being charged for. So routine office or instructional supply, ordinary class materials, those sorts of things are covered in the other elements, the instructional support and institutional support calculations. So again, not here. That's not what this is for. And our extraordinary rate cost history, again, we've got 4 tiers going from 0 up to $139 a credit hour, and those rates have progressed over the years. Okay, so that takes care of the expense side of the ledger. How are those costs then to be determined? We talked a little bit about this earlier. A third for our in-district students at the community colleges, and the out-district students at the community colleges, the 2/3, 1/3, and same as the tech colleges. And then the secondary students in Excel and CTE, 100%. I want to just point out high school students who are not in Excel and CTE, but they are enrolled at a college, either in dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment. They are included in the other 3 rings to the left. So when a high school student takes Composition 1, they're ready for that, and they take it at their local college, they are counted in these calculations. They are included in the enrollment counts. And I do have some figures at the bottom. So for each of those 3 circles, about 40% of our total courses, tiered and non-tiered, are for community colleges students who are in district, so from within the local taxing district. And about 43.8% are for the community colleges are out district. And then roughly 16.2% of our total, we don't have as many tech colleges, of course, are delivered by the tech colleges. We'll get into some of that. So just an example, so we have a theoretical student named John. He is an in-district student, and he's going to Green Valley Community College, taking computer and information systems, taking Applied Network 1. Here's how the third plays out for state aid, student tuition, and the property tax. But Jane is taking a class in wind energy technology, and she's taking a small wind turbine, which is tier rate 3 as a class, and she's at a technical college. So that generates $718 in state aid. The 2/3 and $359 is to be attributable to student tuition. Now, when we reference the revenue in the cost model, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the college is charging the student. The colleges clearly set their own tuition rates, but in the cost model, for purposes of determining the state aid, it is assumed that 1/3 would be coming from the tuition. And just a refresher on how this has played out over time. For many years, we didn't really fund the colleges according to their enrollments. We had many years where funding languished. We had a gap in our state funding. We did not have enough to fully fund the model. And so we had appropriation language that said, basically kind of hold everybody steady. If there's not enough and you have to prorate, just affect everybody in the same manner. So we kind of just were in this progression of kind of holding everybody similar to what they were in the prior year. But then in 2022, the legislature did launch us on a path to recentering state aid so that over 3 years, we have progressed to now where we are to a point where the state aid is calculated, and then that is how much the colleges will receive. And we'll get into that a little bit more in detail because there's a nuance to that. So for fiscal year 2023, now keep in mind, we are currently in fiscal year 2025, but 2 years ago in 2023, that was the first year where the legislature fully funded the model. That was looking back at AY21 calculations for distribution in fiscal year 2023. At that point, they said, hold everyone harmless. So no college received lower amounts for tiered or non-tiered state aid compared to the prior year. If a college's enrollment would have resulted in lower state share, their state aid was just held flat. But if they were eligible to receive more, they got more. In year 2, then, they reduced that hold harmless factor by 1/2, And so for fiscal year 2024, if college's enrollment would have resulted in lower state share calculations, their reduction was reduced by half. And then finally, in this year, the year 3 of the full adoption, again, the legislature fully funded the cost model. And for the first time, which was remarkable, the calculations were based entirely on college enrollments. At the time, 21 of the 26 did receive less tiered state aid, and 22 received less non-tiered state aid. Those calculations were done on a model using a 3-year rolling average. So that's where we are now. We do a 3-year look back for the 3 most recent years we have data, and we average the calculations, and that is their determination for how the state aid is calculated. So if a college is experiencing dramatic decline, it kind of helps soften that reduction year over year. So where we are now, we are looking back at, this should say, yes, that's correct, sorry, moment. For AY 2024, the most recent year for which we have the data available is last academic year. So last summer, the colleges all turned in their AY 24 enrollment data. When they submit that data, they don't just say, we had 12 students in class wind turbine. We have information for each individual student in each individual class to clarify what class they're in, are they in district, all the details for every student. So we aggregate all that information up. So I want to be clear, this isn't aggregate information. This is very, very specific information. So there's a huge amount of data that we exchange. In fall, so we collected that last summer, so July to September. In the fall, then, the institutional support data was derived based on the information we have from the college's most recent audits. And we re-examined, we did the usual extraordinary cost review. And in this winter, we aggregated everybody's costs according to the financing. And here we are today presenting these cost calculations to you. The amounts are noted in your agenda. The legislature then, they're in town, we're on day 18 of 90. It will be their job to then make sure that the funding is there to fully fund the cost model. We do seem to be on a path to that end. The governor included full funding, $7 million more. And the House side of the budget includes that additional funding. So we are on a path to receive again full funding for fiscal year 2026. Once they approve that language, then we will be giving, the usual distributions, half in August and half in January of next year. But just an overview really quickly. So of our total credit hour production last year, 84% is attributable to the community colleges, 16% to our tech colleges. For tiered courses, 68% was delivered by the community colleges, and technical colleges delivered 32%. And again, for our in and out district enrollments for the community colleges, it was roughly half and half. In district students were 48% for the community colleges, and out district students 52%. We talk a lot because you are the post-secondary technical education, but the majority of what our system delivers, especially for our community colleges, is non-tiered. So the extent to which our community colleges do deliver a lot of technical courses, many of them are still delivering a lot more gen eds than they are the technical courses. So these are just ranked here. Allen County had the highest extent of technical, and Hutchinson had the highest rate of the technical, and so they were at 33% technical at Hutch. Overall, 24% of the system to 19 community colleges was from technical courses. And for the tech colleges, fewer schools, we could get a little bit more information on one slide. 58.8% of their credit hours was for tiered. Across the two-year colleges, the tech colleges delivered 9% of our non-tiered, so that's far less of a focus for them. But you do see where Wichita State Tech is delivering 39,000 credit hours there of non-tiered courses still. And you can see the split there on the right. To what extent are the technical colleges delivering the non-tiered courses in blue? One last thing I want to emphasize, last session, the legislature enacted a bill, Senate Bill 291, which mandated all of us to change our agency website. So we are now kansasregents.gov rather than kansasregents.org. If you still have a favorite saved as kansasregents.org, you can still navigate. It will redirect you, but we are officially kansasregents.gov. And we have updated community college and tech college data books. I think we're on the verge of publishing those this month and probably later this week. And we've got the Key Stats portal and the Degree Stats portal, all of those portals up to date and out there for the public to partake. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions, comments? Yes.
Do you mind backing up one slide? I'm sorry, I did not quite keep up with you.
Oh, sure.
What are the two
So
columns there?
sure. On the right side is the percentage. So Flint Hills Tech alphabetically there at the top. So they are delivering about 52% of their courses are technical, the credit hours, and 48% are non-technical. So you see Washburn, hours to the left, percentages to the right. Yes, yes.
Yes.
I know this is probably a dumb question. I should know. Are these state general funds or it's their regions? I mean,
Certainly.
kind of how that works.
No, that's a great question. So the state funding for the tiered, I don't really have, my only good example is our appropriation language, and this happens to be from 2013. But when our agency receives a line item appropriation from the state legislature for tiered funding and non-tiered funding and Excel and CTE, it's coming to us from the state general fund.
Cindy?
So the spreadsheet,
Mhm.
just for some clarity on my part. So the fiscal year 25 allocation that you list
Mhm.
here, that is the exact allocation that each college submitted and that you reviewed, and went through the model and all of that. That's the exact allocation that they asked for, and that's the exact allocation that they're getting.
Let's visit that page. So on page 34, Member Hoover, so Alan always gets picked on because they are alphabetically first. Let's read this from across. So the yellow section to the left, the yellow portion is for the tiered courses. Allen, for the most recent 3 years, they had calculated state share ranging from 453,000 to 490 and then down to 478. So the 3-year average for those 3 years, 473,000. Last year, when we were doing this for the current year that we're in, their allocation ended up being, for their 3-year average, $468,000. So they are owed, according to the cost model, $5,629 more next year than they received this year. So the 3-year average is what we use to determine their fiscal year 2026 allocation. And we compare it then to the prior year to figure out for the legislature, how much more funding do you need to give us in total so that we can make it all work? So in this case, for tiered funding, we actually need almost $4 million more for this next coming year for the budget to make our tiered funding cost model work, and we don't have a gap. Now, for the non-tiered courses in green across the entirety of the system, we actually have a slight abundance of state funding relative to the current year. So we've told the legislature we need $828,000 less than you gave us for this year. So you net the two out and we're roughly about $3.1 million between the two. And this seems to be the figures that they are relying upon to give us our funding for next year.
Okay, so for fiscal year 26 funding, it'll be fully funded, which is 3.1 million more than what was funded last year.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I would just add, only because We use the same instructional cost model figures for the Excel and CTE, but they're funded on a slightly different timeline. What we did was we looked at the most recent 3 years. What kind of growth were we seeing in the most recent 3 years for which we have the data? And there's a clear path of about 9% growth. And so we said, we think we need 9% more next year to make the Excel and CTE. And then we cross fingers and hope that is the correct figure. And that's what they'll give us. And that's what we'll need to spend and come to you for in September.
Anyone else? Question, comment? Yes.
Sorry, just being a numbers person. So, and I can't read that tiny writing. Since it's your guys' line item, does the statute tell you how to calculate it, or you came up with the model yourself?
This model has been developed developed initially in concert with the colleges, and
Okay.
Rita's nodding her head because she was heavily involved in that with a lot of college presidents and so on. And there's been an agreement more recently then, there have been some modifications made, partially with the TEA assistance and partially with the community colleges and technical colleges assistance. We actually had an interim legislative committee meeting back in 2022 that helped launch. Representative Susan Humphreys was fundamental to that process of getting this 3-year running average concept going. So that's kind of, it's not just us, it's collectively how this is all done together.
And so when they don't respond, because you said you base it off of the data that you get, do you think that hurts or helps, or, you know what I mean? Like,
Don't respond.
they,
Sorry.
for the salaries, I thought you
Oh.
said that you
Yes.
asked them to self-report to you.
So we rely on the national data source that we have. It's the only
Okay.
known data source for instructor data. I believe, and Jim can correct me, I don't believe the colleges have thought that they've wanted to provide us that directly, like the extraordinary costs.
Oh,
But we,
So maybe I misunderstood. I thought, what are you getting? Were you getting something from the colleges when you surveyed
not on the
them?
instructor rates.
Okay,
not for the
there was
instructor
something else.
salaries.
Okay.
Quick thing. Somewhere in your presentation, you mentioned that if a student is in high school and they're being paid through the CTE, when do they get counted otherwise? I mean, are they not, if they're in high school, are they not always getting
Mhm.
CTE funding?
Yes. So the high school, the school district for that student would be getting a 0.5 weighting bonus, but that stays at the school district, and that's what the local school board decides they do with that funding for the school district. But the student then enrolling at the college generates the state aid cost within our cost model.
Okay, okay.
Yes,
Very good.
yes.
I was going to ask Elaine, is there any guidance for the colleges or tech colleges for the student third component that they have, or is it all over the board what they're charging for the student third for just in district, out of district?
For each individual college sets its own rate for tuition, and it can make a distinction in state, but not in district. And some of them do make that distinction. Some of them don't make a distinction. It's totally up to their local boards.
Okay. I was just curious because it seems like all of those uncovered costs get thrown into the overall pool that gets split either third, or half by the state.
Yes, but then also the colleges would be aware of their competing
Areas.
and who,
So
if
still
they're
kind
a
of market.
neighboring college, what are they going to charge? And we don't want to we want to stay competitive, I'm
Okay,
sure.
that's
That's a
what I was-
consideration.
Anyone else? Anything else?
Comment. And so just to clarify, if students, and thank you for your description, if students are at the high school and they go take the credits at the community college, they can have dual credit, but they code so that they don't receive any weighted funding if they are taking an Excel and CTE course. So
Yes.
so
there's a
just the one
distinction.
funding source if they're going to the community or technical college. So they would forego the weighted funding. They could choose dual credit so they could have it for both high school and college.
Good questions. A lot of stuff. Skills USA, folks, there will be a test at the end. Because I don't understand any of it, all right? Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you.
Very appreciate it. All right. Pardon? You wanna-
Yep, I was just saying that PowerPoint, we do have that available if people want that. So Vera, if you'll shoot that out to all the TEA members, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. Next item. With Jarman, has got additional information and a lot of information for us, so thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone, and I will attempt horribly to follow up Vice President Frisbee and her clear explanation. So on page 35, and you can see that here on the screen as well, we have the issue paper, and that will also then start the spreadsheets to review the Excel and CTE fees that were submitted to be approved for next year. So in that issue paper, we have for your reference the standard information that we include, which includes that KSA that directs the TEA to make these reviews, and also references the discussions from 2019 and the fee categories that are considered allowable that the authority has refined over the last 6 years that we've been reviewing this. And when I looked at the fact that this has been 6 years, there are moments when it definitely feels like it's been longer than that. And then there are moments when I was like, "Oh, it's been 6 years, wow." So before we jump into that data, I thought it might be helpful to do just a quick highlight reel of some of the things that we've done over the past 6 years. We first started working on this in late December of 2019, and KBOR staff met with the technical and community colleges to identify fees that are not covered by the instructional cost model. And Vice President Frisbee made a reference to that. If there's a cost recovery process in place for fees, it should not be part of extraordinary costs. And if it's an item that's included in those extraordinary costs, we should not be seeing fees for those things. In 21 and 22, for those years, we collected all the fees via spreadsheets, and that was a very exciting time, as you might imagine. In 23, we graduated to using the KEDS data system and using the live course and program inventory that the colleges maintain. And that year, we also did a deeper dive specifically into welding and nurse aid. Those were programs that had the highest participation, and we created a small group with, again, the community and technical colleges. We met in January of 2022 and created a questionnaire, and each college explained how they were handling each of the fee categories in those similar programs. In 23 to 24 is when we started showing you the rolled up by institution totals comparison 1 year to the next. And then in academic year 25, just last January, those discussions, you all also took a deeper dive into those fees for programs in which those fees increased more than $150 from the previous year, or they were part of the 25 aligned programs or certified nurse aid or medication aid, or were programs with the highest participation rates where the fees increased more than the median. And notably, also, we reopened those collections for data inputs and changes in October of 23, in December of 23, and then again in February of 2024. So based especially on the work that we did last year, I took one additional step before we brought this to you today that we've not done previously. So we'll add that to the highlight reel. I sent out to each institution in December a comparison that just shows this is my program, these were my 25 fees, and these are my 26 fees. The total roll-up that starts on page 83. Each college saw that, and then they had an opportunity If they found any discrepancies, any things that needed to be changed, we allowed them to go into the data system and make those changes. And then I re-polled that report as well. And all institutions confirmed for us that those academic year 26 fees as submitted are correct. So that brings us to today and also the current TEA goal to identify and share best practices on ways to reduce and eliminate these fees, and to also work to ensure that the actual costs and potential subsidies are adequately communicated. So the important thing, I think, we all recognize is that in the review of the fees today, there's not a lot of time to make progress on that goal. So we asked ourselves as staff what might be useful for you all to consider to start demonstrating progress on that goal. So the first set of charts starts on page 37 of your packet, and these are the changes specifically for academic year 26 that are being proposed. These are course by course or program by program adjustments for AY 26 that have just been submitted. I'd also like to note here that Barton Community College did not actually change any of their fees for academic year 26. But what we have not done so far is we haven't taken a look at changes on a longer trend line than just 2 years at a time. So the second set of charts, and Chair Frederick mentioned to me that, again, Charmin with all the spreadsheets, come on. But on page 83, you will see where we have actually brought together data starting in academic year 23, and then added 24, 25, and 26. We highlighted each one of those award levels separately to try to make it a little easier to see the comparisons, because we know that we would expect the fees at the associate degree level would be higher than the shorter levels because there are simply more courses taught and more situations where fees would be charged. We started with academic year 23 because, as we just highlighted, we had gotten a couple years under our belt. We'd worked out some of the major kinks, and that was when we transitioned to using KEDS and also were able to build out those reporting outputs better for the institutions to see while they're loading their data to try to make sure that everything is correct. So on your chart, using academic year 23 as sort of a baseline, we highlighted the totals each year. If they increased, they're highlighted in red. If they decreased, we highlighted them in green as just a way to hopefully visually get a sense of how fees have fluctuated year over year. And I do just want to point out that then on the far right hand, those two columns, we're comparing academic year 23 to 26, and we've done the funding difference, and we've also calculated the percentage difference. Every year that we do this, we make strides, and it's important to note that you can quickly see that there are many instances of overall fee reductions. Some have been incremental year over year. Some have been a little different. Some have been a one-time reduction, and then that fee holds from there. So with all of that, I would stand for questions.
If I may, our committee met to chat about this a couple of weeks ago, and one point I would like to interject is that lest anyone on the authority think that Charmin has kind of gone haywire with her spreadsheeting, I will tell you that it was my recommendation that for at least our purposes in this discussion, we pull across in a graphic way the way these numbers are moving around. So it wouldn't necessarily be useful to us going forward to see all these Christmas tree lights. But I think the point of this is it helps you appreciate that this data doesn't seem to be coming through in a very coherent way. The patterns don't tend to emerge. And I think that is the premise of this discussion. Not so much that these extraordinary costs are skyrocketing. In some cases, they're not, they're going down. Not so much that any institution is doing anything wrong, but over the course of this data collection process, which I understand started in 2019, 2020 or so, I think it's been learned that some refinements are in order of some sort in order to get to a point where year over year, you start to see numbers that kind of make sense, whether they're going up or going down. If I look at this, I'm not a statistician, but if I look at this and I see these disparities, I think it doesn't probably reflect something that's real out on the ground. That seems to be something about the data and the way it was reported or the way it was interpreted or something. So I think the premise here, if you will, give me a little grace on the Christmas tree chart. I don't imagine you'll be doing it that way going forward, but hopefully you will accept the concept here that this helps us see that the data is noisy. And it's hard for us to do our job of looking over these extraordinary costs and making sure they're appropriately approvable with data that's noisy. Thank you.
Yes.
Carmen, you and I talked last week and then again this morning. In the first set of spreadsheets, those fee amounts for next year, I'm assuming those are all increases?
On the first set of spreadsheets, not necessarily all increases. Adjustments. So they may have gone up or down. So a book fee may have been $260 and it's now $245.
There's no way in this spreadsheet that we know whether it went up or down.
Not for each individual one, no.
And back on the Christmas tree spreadsheet, and I'll pick on Highland because I live there. FY, that very second line there, FY 23, $345. Next year, 54. Next year is 216. The difference in the 4 years, $129. But in talking to their VP of Tech Ed, they never changed their fee. So he's reporting, and I assume he's doing it accurately, but maybe yeah. They talked full curriculum there the first year, and that's $345. But the next year, they didn't teach any course in that zip code, so it's reported as zero. But they didn't change their fees at all. And then the next year, they taught one course that shows 54, and then the next year shows 216, and it's based on the number of courses that they're teaching in that zip code. So they didn't say, it looks like they lowered $129 in those 4 years, but they didn't lower it at all. They didn't change it. They didn't go up. They didn't go down. So I don't know how many of the other institutions that's similar. So for us I don't know what our charge is to prove the fee. So I'd like to know, because the first spreadsheet doesn't say it, and the next one's, and you guys do a ton of work, so I'm not faulting you at all. You know that. We don't know whether they went up or down, given these two spreadsheets. Am I interpreting that wrong?
I personally, I would not say that you're interpreting that wrong. I do think that the majority of the institutions have indicated that they are, when they report their fees, they're simply saying this course has this fee. I think that some of them may take a similar approach that Highland took, where they actually then take that extra step to look at which courses are being taught and report accordingly. But I don't think that would probably be the norm. I know too that, of course, in many cases, institutions have, two similar courses, and one may have fees associated to it of $100 and the other course has 0. And during the course of a year, those courses are swapped out in the program because of curriculum changes, which changes the fees, changes these rolled up totals. There's a number of ways that this could be happening that is, again, not reflective of a problem or anything like that. There may be instances where an institution looked at their fees and said, oh, wait, we have one that needs to go on there. I've received that question before as well, and had an institution actually add fees in January to the totals that was not previously being reported. So,
Full district, K and state, you didn't, they didn't.
right. This comes directly from their live data in the KEDS database for their courses and programs. And that's why there again, those shifts of courses back and forth and the difference in those fees can easily make some differences up and down potentially each year. Certainly possible.
And I'm not faulting what you've done. I'm just not sure. I have the information, that we need. Is it going up or down?
I think if we look historically on this, one of the intentions on taking a look and reviewing this was to also to try and get a little bit of communication between the colleges. Something in here was, if, for example, Cali County's got $1,330 in fees for the ag production, they're looking at it and saying, well, how's Cloud doing it for $217? Maybe they call them up and say, hey, we've got same SIP, same coursework. Maybe they're using a different set of textbooks or something like that. So that was part of that, what I recall the intention of being.
To help facilitate that, absolutely.
There was another subtopic in our conversation a couple of weeks ago that had to do with certain types of fees that would not seem to be susceptible to that type of variability. They, and just fill in here, but it seemed like we were talking about certification testing fees, which would be uniform because there's some third party administering it or something. So, again, this isn't accusatory. It's just a matter of maybe pulling this thing in the garage and opening up the hood and seeing if it needs to be tuned up a little bit. So.
I understand what you're saying. So does the KEDS data have the number of people that could be pulled in to see if that's the difference of if they're adding the total program cost? Because I think that's what he was referring to, was that if they had 0 people or 5 people.
Right. So these fees are not reported based on enrollments. That we would need to talk with the data research and planning folks to see about doing that, because that would be bringing together 2 collections and merging those to be able to say, essentially what we would be able to say is there were 13 students that were charged the $15 fee for OSHA from XYZ institution in which program. We do not do that right now. No, we don't. And these fees are being submitted are for next year and are, like I said, they're not based on actual enrollments.
So Charmin, just so I can get over my fuzziness, the first set of spreadsheets are course specific, right?
Course and program specific, and they're just changes
Right.
from last year to this year.
Is that course and program specificity in the second?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, so all of that is incorporated into these totals for academic year 26.
Cindy?
So if you look at page 83, take the first example, there's quite a few. So SIP, 10104, there's a whole bunch of them that are associates, different colleges. Basically, that's supposed to be, or the intent is that these are the fees for that particular course.
That particular program for all of the courses within that program.
an average or the same for each of the programs within?
Well, each institution charges different totals for the fees. So
What I'm trying to get to is it an equivalent look? In other words, Allen Community College and Butler Community College, you know, one, I mean, it's all over the map, but you know, $713 on one, $25 on the other. Is that for the same type of course? Should those be more similar, I guess, and would that indicate that maybe the data is not, that we're not looking at something?
I think a couple of things there. So Allen Community College, just as an example, and I'm making this one up, they may have a certain amount of textbook fees. They may have a certain amount of certification fees. They may be prescribing that their students purchase something in the form of a uniform, whereas Butler Community College may not have that same deck of fees. They are teaching the exact same program. Presumably, the coursework is similar enough, although this is not an aligned program. Presumably, the coursework is, the basics are similar enough that that is comparable. But what each institution actually charges fees for varies a great deal. Many institutions are, for instance, using open resource textbooks, and they're no longer charging fees for textbooks. And some institutions still are using very specific textbooks, depending on the program, where there are very significant fees. Some institutions have partnerships with their business and industry where they are getting they're getting uniforms paid for, let's say, or something like that, or even certification tests. So I'm not sure that that really answers your question. These are the same program. There should be a certain level of parity between the coursework, but what categories on the first page of the issue paper, which categories an institution actually charges fees for varies widely. And I think that that's what Member Hess was getting to, is the opportunity to better share the best practices. So for perhaps the folks that train farm and ranch management to get together to share and say, we've been able to identify this textbook and it's free. And how does everybody else feel about that? And trying to find some of those ways where we can find that parity and find ways to reduce and or eliminate the fees. But those categories are dependent, the institution decides.
Thank you.
If I could add to that too, I think want to add to my other question I asked earlier of Elaine on the difference in tuitions. As I understand it, the colleges can assess, for example, in your question, Allen Community College could have $200 a credit hour on it, and they just absorb some expense, and Butler may charge $100, and then they're going to charge a fee.
Right, so I can tell Jim has a definite point of view on the parity thing, and I want to be clear that this isn't a ultimate campaign to get it to where these things are flat across all the institutions, because I don't think that's real. That isn't the agenda there. You said certain level of parity, and I think that's a pretty nuanced way to get at it. It would seem that these things ought to be somewhere on a line, within a tolerance band of some sort. But we know there are good reasons. You find good reasons every year why one institution's fees are here and another's are here, and they're perfectly legitimate explanations. The problem from a data point of view is that it's really tough for us, unless we were to have an interview on every single thing that's variable, to have any clarity around that. So again, it comes down to kind of cleaning up the data process and hopefully then being left with legitimate differentials that explain why this institution's charging that and this one's charging that. Okay, that makes sense. I see what you're doing. So I guess I'd like to be clear that this isn't a slow but sure movement in my mind towards saying y'all have to charge the same thing. That wasn't the thought. Right.
Right.
Curtis.
Go ahead.
Curtis and I told you to put that second spreadsheet in there, knowing it'd be confusing. And as a former president, only have so many lost leaders. I mean, you want to get the fees close to zero as you can, but you got to pay for the program. Is it as simple as this first spreadsheet? And I don't need it now, but in the future, each institution lists their programs and you have three-year listing. So you can see if they went up or down. I mean, I like this first spreadsheet, but it still doesn't tell me whether they increase their fees or whether they decrease their fees. I just want to see that.
Are you suggesting maybe a separate process where the institutions are reporting that instead of reporting through the data system associated to their programs?
I just want to see whether they increase or decrease. The first one, early childhood for Allen County, $15. Is that $15 more than it was last year, or is that $15 less than last year?
Well, so it may be possible for our data folks to give us a difference in every single fee. And I do emphasize every single fee because it is actually much more substantial than what I've.
Actually, you wouldn't need every single. You'd only need the ones that changed. And so you've got the ones
Right,
that
and
changed.
these are the ones that changed, right?
Approval, but I still don't know if it went up or went down. That's just what I want to know. And I'm not trying to create more work for people. I'm just trying to make it clearer for everybody because it certainly wasn't clear for me. And I probably had more experience with it than most people.
You may be able to run another column and just do a calculation, do a formula. And then you can get it from the most recent year, or just the comparison of the two.
We will definitely see what we can do.
Other comments, questions?
Well, Mr. Chair, is it appropriate to task staff or somehow initiate a discussion with the institutions around how to get this data better and cleaner, or what would help? I like the idea that maybe some of the reporting we get would point to certain things, but we still come back to, is it not the case that these numbers are coming into you in a way that they're different interpretations of what's being asked for, I guess, or something like that. The data isn't coming in a clean way somehow.
Sure.
It's not an accusation. Nobody's doing it wrong, but
Sure.
the system needs to be considered.
And that is still entirely possible, which is why we took that step to say, for each institution, they received those two columns there. Actually, the last four columns, I believe, is what I included of here's your 25 totals, here's your 26 totals. Do these look right? And again, we got that confirmation that yes, that did appear correct to them. So perhaps, as you had mentioned, Member Sneeden, that maybe a little bit of perhaps looking at tasking a small group to help the Budget and Finance Committee take a deeper dive into some of the things that are going on. Do we have opportunities in the reporting? Do we have opportunities in the interpretation? Do we have opportunities to share some of the best practices where folks have found the ability to reduce the fees? And perhaps that might be a way forward.
Any thoughts?
So if we add a column, just thinking from the stats point of view, you add a column, you get a plus or minus from the year before to this year. And what does that tell us? All it tells us that there's a change it doesn't, you won't have, the next year will be totally based on those other 2 years. And then what do we do with it? What do you want to do with the information that that we're asking for, or that we're talking about asking for? How will it inform decision-making?
I'd just like to say I mean, if I was looking at this from a P&L or a business perspective, I'd like to know what the goal is, and the goal is to effectively provide education. So what's our cost of doing that? If I were to look at this, I would request, could we get a cost of tuition for a 3-course credit hour from the institution with the cost from the state, the cost from the student, the cost from the district, and then any fees associated. And at the end of that 3-course, this is what it costs to get that through either associates or certificate, whatever the exit point.
That's where we come into that whole thing of it's more expensive in some areas of the state to provide a service than it is another. And so then I'm trying to figure out, we add all, we add, I don't have any problem getting more information. I like information. I'm just trying to figure out what it's going to tell us, because we're not going to have a variable in there that you could set off for a ratio or something about, okay, and it's cost 20% more to be in this part of the state or in this county or where it's less expensive in this county. And so if our goal is to get just a general number that will work, that is a fair number, I come back to the idea, I think we're going to have a range, a pretty probably broad range. But it could support our idea, our thesis that it is a wide range, and we can't come up with one number that's going to be the perfect number for providing a service. I'm just trying to think through.
So ultimately, though, the goal is to reduce fees. So not even if you're comparing school to school, if you have a percentage change from year to year in these fees, I mean, if I were looking at it and it was like there was one that increased in a fee over 10%, or whatever percent you want to put on it, you'd go look at it. I mean, there should be a reason why something has gone up significantly, and the goal is to decrease fees, right? Or to keep the costs in line. So that would be maybe a better way to look at just the fee structure and see, okay, there's something increasing here. It's out of bounds. What's causing that? And there may be a very good reason for that, which may drive a different question. But at least you could do something with the data that is developed.
I hope you don't mind, but since we were in on this conversation, I guess maybe I've developed some points of view here. I agree with you. In other words, yes. It seems to me job one is to somehow comb through the process, the engine that's churning this data out, and ensure that if a given institution, I'm just looking at your memo here, and if they say, well, we charge X for background checks, that we're all saying the same thing about what background checks mean. And I'm just literally randomly picking that with my eyes. I'm not saying that all the numbers would be the same, but everybody would mean the same thing when they entered whatever the number is for background checks. That seems to me to be gate one here. Because it seems as though when we had our meeting, you had some pretty good examples of information that had been entered where, this institution gave us this number and this one was different, but you suspected that, again, no wrongdoing, but like they had probably coupled in a couple of things here that they hadn't. So it's tough to judge that, right? So that's gate one in my mind. Gate two, I think, would be some sort of like deviation analysis to say, well, the average for background checks is this. We all agree that within a band of 20% either way or whatever, we'd have to decide. That's not out of whack necessarily, but if somebody comes in and the average for a background check is $35 and somebody's charging $300, that's probably should catch our attention, right? And then the third dimension would be increases over year. Like, okay, everybody went up about 5%, but you guys went up 200. That should catch our eye too. That enables us to be managers and overseers of of this data, right? I think I've said all I can possibly add here because I don't have.
Sounds like you could run your column and you could start with what we just talked about. You're not going to be able to run, or it would be time and personnel prohibitive to me at this point to try to dig each variable for each school's, all the different variables they have. So I would start for charges, because there's so many different charges that they have, but we might be able to get an idea to look at something. If we run another column, we do a plus or minus from the year before, we see differences there, that would be a good start to looking at differences, right? Would that, I'm not on the finance committee, so I'm trying to figure out, would that give you a good start to answering your questions?
They're loosely enough that we're sensitive to the fact that there are legitimate differences. It won't do, in my opinion, to come in here and point fingers because one institution is, 5% different from one of the others. So we do need to kind of think through what the bands of tolerance are. But yeah, I think that's fundamentally what it comes down to.
The top of this says submission for approval. And I don't have a problem approving this, but just in the future, all these that we're approving, is it an increase or decrease? That's all I want to know. And, then the committee, if there's some anomaly, we can seek for more information. But for me today, these don't look online.
And we can definitely work with DRP on, adding that. I believe that, I forget which year, but I know that we had that added to this at one time, but it created an additional question about if early childhood education certification tests, let's say we know for Allen, just unfortunately picking on them alphabetically, those first three fees changed up or down. It drove the question then of, but what does that do to the overall cost of that program for the student? Hence the second set of the Christmas tree lights and why we do that. So it sounds like we need both going forward. So like I said, we will work with DRP and work on including that as well.
Anyone else? So with all of that said, I guess I'm curious, who would like to tell me what, in the end, what's the intent? What is our intent, our charge as T? What's the intent as we consider looking at these fees?
I assume that we're determining if the fees are feasible and reasonable. And it's our job to approve those fees. And for me, it's very difficult to do that if I don't know if they're changing from year to year and if there's, kind of if some of these things are more standard and that from institution to institution, the fees should be more similar. I mean, that to me would be the basis, the data that I would need to make that decision.
Jim, did you want to make a comment?
Thank you. Yes. And I, please don't take anything I say as knocking you and your role in this issue. And Charmin does fantastic work. The KBOR staff are so good to the colleges. You've got 26 two-year colleges. Each of them basically is a separate business. We all have different cost models. 19 of them have property tax revenue. 7 of them don't. We have faculty costs all over the map, depending upon the expertise of the faculty, how long they've been with us. We have different statuses of facilities, labs, equipment. We have that fun thing called how do you stay in compliance, like with accreditation, which produces no revenue. And I hope you'll understand that for most of our institutions, that combination of tuition and fees plus state appropriations, and in some cases tax revenue, we have to take that all together to make our budgets work. And tuition often goes towards operating costs of the administration and the support staff, and program fees are helping pay for that program. And many of our institutions are trying to figure out a way to have a bit of a buffer on the program side so we can build up some revenue per program to help pay for big ticket items. So yes, there's accountability of the fees, but please realize we all have different structures to play with to make the bottom line come out. And the most important thing is what do you get at the end of it concerning the student and the skill and the job and the salary, and is it helping Kansas? So I don't mind the accountability and the discussion, but please don't put handcuffs on 26 institutions.
And I want to provide some clarity around this because we have gotten this conversation a little bigger than I think it needs to be. This is focused on high school students accessing Excel and CTE only. So Jim, charge whatever adult student you want, but for high school students, that's what this conversation is about. Everything else is up to the college. High school students taking these programs tuition free while in high school. So that's really what we're looking at, a subsection of the overall college.
And then these fees are paid by the high school student?
This would be the student
Okay.
burden.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And so the first step is we do have to come to some kind of agreement on the FY26 fees that are before you, because colleges are going to start enrollments for summer and fall. So these students do need to know, parents most likely need to know what to expect to pay. So that's kind of a first, we need to figure that out. The second is clearly we have some cleanup to do. So we would probably ask Jim and Seth to give us names of a few people with some data background so we can look at fixing some of this. Yes. Yep.
Ray, just real quick, I agree with the comments that David made. I mean, we've got to make action, but I think it would be wise for us on Dave's point and also April's points to know if these are increases or decreases in that specific textbook or that welding equipment or whatever. And then to April's point, these are for high school students, in my opinion, most in need for career and tech ed. And my angst, as many knows, are we putting an additional burden on them of paying fees? Is that a roadblock for them to take in career and tech ed courses? So as I look at the Christmas tree spreadsheet, I do think we're comparing apples and oranges, but my concern is we continue, and I realize costs go up, but we continue to increase year after year. But there are some colleges and institutions who are doing it almost for zero, specific to our CTE or Excel and CTE students. That's my random soapbox for right now.
I apologize for starting all this off, but for me, it's simple. I just want to know what they're submitting for approval. Is that an increase or a decrease? I just want to know that. And if there's some big anomalies, I think that's what the committee's for. Take a look.
Well, it would be good to keep it simple. There's no doubt about it. And some way to simplify, the information and the numbers that we are looking at. And I think it's my impression that, again, we've got people outside of this room that work across the street that look at this information, and their question becomes, why is there seemingly some disparity on things that should be pretty much the same? Testing, or tests that are done on certain programs. One college institution, $100, another one, $500. I'll just pick those numbers out of the air. And the question becomes, why is that appropriate? And talk about keeping it simple, then often their answer is, oh, okay, let's just do away with all fees. We can solve this problem today. Well, that's not a good way to do business, and that doesn't make sense. But we still have individuals, elected individuals, that see it perhaps that way. So trying to keep this simple in terms that seemingly give some flexibility, but yet show some responsibility, I think is our intent, I hope, as a DEA. We don't want to handcuff anyone, but we have to hold accountable, or at least a willingness to answer questions. Help me understand where that doesn't become offensive in the institution. There may be a very good explanation, but we don't hear it, and all we're looking at are numbers on a page. So we make decisions just based on numbers on a page. And that's not always a good way to make decisions. That's part of it. But again, it goes back to help me understand. We're trying to come to a decision that makes sense, not just for us, institutions, but for those that we serve in the classroom. Why does this make sense, and why is it appropriate? And again, trying to come up with an explanation that a third grader can understand, I think is part of my goal, is to help us, because helping individuals that don't, they're not looking behind the curtain, they're just looking at numbers on a page. And so they go, well, this is an easy decision. Well, no, it really is. It's difficult. But it's a decision that we as a TEA need to continue to work towards simplifying so that we can communicate and we're held accountable for the why of our decisions. But today, I think we are being asked to take action on the information we've been provided. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. And
In doing so, also with an understanding, obviously, there's more work to be done. So I would entertain a motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Any opposed? Say motion carried. Thank you, Sharman.
And we'll bring forth some ways to try to clean this and narrow it, make it make more sense. We'll bring some more ideas to the committee using the data we have.
Well, and it's not just make more sense. It's again, because to Sharman, makes perfect sense. But to Mike down here, it doesn't make any sense. So it's a matter of joining those things together in a language that we all understand. All
Can I,
right.
like maybe that's, because I think this happened last year too. I was at this exact same meeting for my boss, where it's this big discussion and then a rush to approve. And so maybe there's some sort of way for next year's approval that, I don't know the proper formal procedures of subcommittees or discussions or what have you, but some sort of way to have this discussion before you need to approve this right now, kind of thing. So I don't know if that's,
Right, well,
I don't know.
okay. Well, Skills USA, you thought we'd never get there, didn't you? Yeah, I know what you're thinking. You just want to go eat lunch. I don't blame you. I do too. So anyway, we want to welcome our friends from Skills USA. Becky, thank you for your leadership. And this is something we always look forward to for how many years, that you have a update, report, and see and talk to real live Skills USA people. So Becky, we'll turn it over to you. Welcome.
Well, it's a joy to be here. It's a pleasure to meet all of you, sitting on the board that makes decisions for our students. And so we just want to stand here before you today and show you why you do what you do. And so I'm going to introduce our president of our Skills USA post-secondary team, Omar Lopez.
Welcome.
Hi. As she said, I'm Omar Lopez. I'm in second year in the app development and emerging technologies at Fort Hays Tech Northwest. I always get those mixed up.
Which one?
Fort Hays Tech Northwest.
Okay.
I got it. I practiced it before coming here. I don't know if any of you remember me, but last year I came as vice president of program. This year, I'm excited to be president, trying to carry on the legacy. As far as experiences in Skills USA goes, I've been in a web contest. We took gold at state with my partner, Jan Delugan. He's here today too. And this year I'm hoping to get gold at nationals too. And talking about nationals, I was excited to go last year at Atlanta, Georgia. It's something I thought I'd never experience, coming to the US. I still miss Mexico, like the tacos. I haven't found any good tacos down here. If you guys have any recommendations, I'd love to take it any day. But we also went to Washington, D.C. last year, which was amazing, seeing the Capitol and everything over there, the monuments and memorials. Hopefully this year I get to meet a lot more people. And in every conference, I hope to be the popular one, saying hello to everyone in the hallways. And yeah, as far as my team goes, I'm excited that they're all my friends, and we're all going to Atlanta and Washington again. But I'd like to present our Vice President of Finance.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jan Blair Delugan. I'm a second-year student at Fort Hays Tech Northwest, studying app development and emerging technologies. I'm currently serving as the Skills USA Kansas Post-Secondary Vice President of Finance. My Skills USA journey began in my first year when I was elected District Historian. That role gave me an opportunity to attend the 2023 Fall Leadership Conference in Hutchinson, Kansas, where I developed and improved my leadership skills through interactive workshops and inspiring sessions. I've also served as a Courtesy Corps member at the 2024 Skills USA Kansas Leadership and Skills Conference, where I helped set up events and made sure that it runs smoothly. Competing in web design and development at the state level was another major milestone for me. My partner and I won first place, advancing us to the 2024 Skills USA National Leadership and Skills Conference in Atlanta, Georgia. And not only was I a competitor, I was also a Kansas delegate. I attended delegation sessions that really helped sharpen my leadership skills. I built connections with people from different parts of the country. I traded pins. I also met with professionals in industries related to my field, and had the time to explore downtown Atlanta. That week was unforgettable. That week was an unforgettable experience for me. It motivated me to come back and compete again this year. And to top it all off, my partner and I placed third in the web design development competition nationwide. Skills USA has helped me personally, academically, and professionally, preparing me for my future career. And Through Skills USA, I've earned first place Skills USA Kansas Scholarship and a national level scholarship from Skills USA and National Technical Honor Society. Skills USA opened many doors for me, providing opportunities that would have been difficult to access without being a member. And the achievements and experiences I gained were key factors in helping me win our school's presidential scholarship. And yeah, Skills USA has had a huge impact on my education, finances, career goals, and confidence. At first, I didn't expect to achieve so much. I just thought it would just be a fun experience. But looking back, it has been the most memorable part of my college journey. The awards and recognitions that I've received have strengthened my resume and helped with scholarship applications and hopefully job applications down the line. Thanks to Skills USA, I have a better chance of success because of the experiences and lessons that I've learned. Thank you.
I'd like to present our Vice President of Governance now.
Good day, Kansas Board of Regents. My name's Heather Johnson. I am the Vice President of Governance. I am also an alumni of, here we go, Fort Hays Tech Northwest in Goodland, Kansas. I am currently a student as well, going for my second associate's degree in, I'm going for crime scene investigation now. I've got an associate's in cloud and crypto, computer programming. So Skills USA was it's an amazing program. It's an amazing organization. It was thrown on me last year. They needed another competitor for web design, competed against a few of these guys and my teammate. And anyways, we placed third in state, and I really wanted to go to nationals with everybody, so I became a delegate, got to sit in on delegate sessions. Government, as I'm getting older, is really interesting to me. I absolutely love it. So it's an organization that just makes everybody family. It makes you feel like no matter what's going on, you've got a place to belong. And they're very good helping people get jobs, helping people have the education and the skills that they need to succeed in the world. And it's just been a great experience. So thank you.
All right. Now, if Vice President of Program, she stole my spot from last year.
Hello. So my name is Swain Valdez Dominguez, and I go under the program Computer Graphics Technology. And as he said, I am the Vice President of Program. I am from Fort Hays Tech Northwest. Tongue twister, but so how I came to be a part of Skills USA was I participated in the state pin design, and I did place first gold under post-secondary, and I'm very proud of myself for that. But because of that and that start, I was able to experience more social, since I'm very introverted and I was very in my bubble. But now that I'm out here speaking in front of all of you, it makes me proud of myself for how far I've gone. And knowing that I can develop a nice skill like this, being able to speak out in front of large crowds and everything. But Skills USA is a very nice opportunity for me. It has also opened up a bunch of doors, made me learn more about myself and learn a bunch of new other people. And it made me develop a bunch of other new skills and also work on things I needed work on. So, and I have huge expectations, and I really hope I can contribute a lot to my position. Thank you.
Getting tired of standing up so much. Next is our Vice President of Membership.
Hi, my name is Nicole Medina, and I'm part of the Medical Assistant Program at Fort Hays Tech Northwest. This is my first year in skills, actually, so I don't have any experience in going to competing. But I went to fall conference that has helped me get out of my introversy. It really has helped me to talk to more people, because before I would have never stood up here. I would have actually never been on this trip if it wasn't for Omar. And because we went to high school together. And so he's really helped me, just showing me what skills has done for him and how he's come out of his shell a lot has helped me realize that this can open a lot of doors for me. And as I may not have as experience as everybody else, just going to the fall conference has helped me alone in my clinicals. It's helped me gain more confidence with talking to patients, whether it's about showing more empathy or helping them problem solve that I personally would not have been able to do without skills. And being able to go to the fall conference and obtain a state officer position has helped me a lot with leadership, and it has helped me in other aspects with sports management, which I am a manager for our softball team at our school. And then it also has helped me in leadership with being the president of robotics that Omar and me started last year. And I'm hoping to continue going through our skills through this year and when I return to Fort Hays Tech next year for the respiratory therapy program. Thank you.
Last one. All right. Is Vice President of Partnership?
Nice to meet you all. My name is Isaac Bisasso, and I come from a small country. Well, not so small, but it's called Uganda, and Uganda is very beautiful compared to here, where you have mood swings of weather. You have it's either cold or hot, everything, and then it's either windy or windy and hot, windy and cold. As I said, mood swings. But I'm grateful to be here, and then God gave me the opportunity to be in another small organized village called Goodland, Kansas. I call it organized because the infrastructure is good. The roads are wonderful. The first time I drove in from Uganda and then getting onto Goodland roads, I was like, yeah, there are no potholes, you know? So that was fun. And then I got to experience the school. One of the challenges I found initially when I got into the school was I want to be in the medical field, and I was doing something because of my background in electronics. I chose to do the program I'm doing now, which is application development and emerging technologies, which is somewhat linked to what I did back in Uganda. And I was like, well, this is exciting. I need to do it. But going through the process, I was trying to figure out, how do I belong? And Jeremy, our professor, reached out and he's like, do you want to compete? I'm like, compete? It was just out of the blue. And I was like, okay, sure. And just as someone who's getting introduced to a new skill, it was something that kicked me into a whole new experience. And the other noticeable challenge I saw was some of the students who dropped out of our program because they could not find themselves. They were like me, being in a program, something new, and to most, they don't have that drive. They are trying to figure out life. They are having many, many family issues, and then they are put in a place where they cannot find themselves. And to me, Skills USA gave me that opportunity to find what I wanted to do, to find the value in the program that I'm doing, getting to compete and place. That was awesome. It gave me something to brag about. I competed and placed despite of the fact that I was just starting in a program, So that to me was an experience worth noting. And then the other experience was me being part of the courtesy call, where I was able to interact with other people who have similar likes like me, people who want to use their hands to serve. That was something that just triggered me. And I'm like, I want to be a part of that. And mostly I want to inspire other students who would come in and say, well, how can I find myself? And I'm using that, and that's why I came in to, be a part of the leadership team to front this idea. Skills USA is something that, everyone needs a family away from family. Everyone needs something that triggers you into finding yourself. And to me, that was Skills USA. And there are so many things that we can talk about, how I got to compete in public speaking. And I found that it was not easy, but it was more like you get to come out of yourself and just portray an image to the people that you're going to speak to. So right now I'm portraying to you someone from a small country and then someone, from a small little village, organized, Goodland, Kansas. And once again, I'm Isaac Bisaso, and nice to meet you all. And thank you for this opportunity.
How does someone go from Uganda to Goodland, Kansas?
Well, I'll say that I still ask myself the same thing, but I was lucky that I got into a program that I wanted to do somewhat, and a series of things, visa denials and visa approvals, and then I'm here representing, it's just miracles after miracles, and giving me the opportunity. Like, who knew I would be talking to the Board of Regents, as I said, new points to brag about. I would say I talked to the president or chairperson, Frederick, right? I'll say that, and it will be something that I'll, thank you.
Look,
Yeah.
if this is the highlight of your life, we may have to talk.
Isaac also came. I know many of you know that my husband's a minister, and he invited Isaac to come and give us testimony. And what a blessing Isaac was to our congregation at our church. He did a phenomenal job. And it thrills me. Each one of these students sitting behind me, they have a unique story. And to hear their story, sometimes it breaks your heart, but then all of a sudden, this fulfillment of accomplishment comes out of them. And it's so exciting to see. And and it just doesn't happen in the student's life. It takes leadership that leads them along the way. And I want to give Jeremy Skirtland, their instructor, a moment to say something, because he sits on my board of directors and he's an amazing teacher that has given me 2 solid teams year after year. And I just appreciate him so much. So Jeremy?
Well, I'm super appreciative of my students. They're awesome. They do great work, and Skills USA actually helps them out a bunch. Like Isaac and all of them were saying, it kind of helps them actually build their leadership, and they also get to network a lot. When they're in Atlanta, Georgia, they fill that entire State Farm arena, and there's kids out there that talking to the whole group. That's an amazing skill to actually build. So them just sitting here talking to you guys, that's really building their skills and moving them forward. So it's just a great opportunity for everybody, and I really enjoy Skills USA being on the board.
Are you a professor?
Yep, I'm a professor in app development and emerging technologies.
Where?
Fort Hays Tech Northwest.
Okay. Is anyone left in Goodland, Kansas? Amazing. And I'm still trying to envision Omar being in a shell. Come on, Omar. I can't imagine you being bashful.
Nah, I'm still pretty nervous about being here, but I try to hide it pretty well. I'm thinking about the food that we're gonna go eat after this.
Thank you. I don't know about you guys, but I want to give them a hand. It's just amazing. Skills USA, it changes lives and saves lives and puts individuals on a whole new path of life and confidence and professionalism. I mean, the list goes on and on. Becky, thank you for what you do. It's a calling, let me tell you, and I appreciate you answering that call. Jeremy, same thing with you, in the way that the lives that you touch and continue to touch in a way that, we just sometimes overlook and, or we don't have an awareness. And thank you for giving us that awareness. It's very humbling. See, now, Skills USA, people. Many of you talked about Atlanta. One good thing, you came back. And I'm telling you now, if you leave Kansas, even to go back to Uganda, we're going to come find you. And we're going to drag all of you back to Kansas. So don't make any plans about leaving this state, okay? There's a lot of work that still needs to be done here at Kansas. We'd love you to be a part of that work as we go forward. Thank you so much for being here. Any TA members have a comment or want to add anything? Well, just a quick reminder, our next meeting again will be here in Topeka on March 27th. So hopefully do note it. And TA members, we do have lunch and our guests will be joining us. So we look forward to continuing our conversation together. So do we have a motion to adjourn? Oh, no one wants to leave or what? Second, any opposed? Thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you all. Take care.